In March of 2026, a security researcher who publishes under the name Tokay0 bought a Shark robot vacuum, carried it home, and took it apart with a screwdriver. The model was an RV2320 EDUS, the ordinary disc-shaped kind that sits on a charger in a hallway and runs a lap of the house while no one is watching. He nicknamed it Mr. Cleany. He was not hunting for anything specific when he started. He was doing the unglamorous groundwork that people in his line of work do with any new device, scanning it for exposed ports and, when the public material turned out to be almost non-existent, taking the hardware apart to see how it was built. What he found over the following weeks was a weakness that reached every internet-connected Shark vacuum in the world, and he then spent 4 months trying, mostly without success, to get the company to treat it as one. It helps to be plain about what a robot vacuum is before getting to what went wrong with this one. It is sold as an appliance and priced like one. Underneath the plastic shell, it is a small computer running Linux with a wireless radio, a bank of sensors, and a standing connection to servers its manufacturer operates. That connection is the entire reason the thing is called smart. It is what lets a cleaning cycle start from a phone in an office across town. It also holds on to the shape of the rooms the machine has learned, and on the models that carry a camera, it is how the robot tells a chair leg from a charging cable and steers around it instead of into it. All of that convenience travels over one connection, and a connection is a road that runs both ways. The way one of these vacuums proves it is entitled to use those servers is with a digital certificate. The least technical way to picture it is a badge the machine holds up at the door. In a system built with care, the badge is scoped tightly. It lets the device act only as itself and only for itself. Your vacuum's badge should be good for your vacuum and nothing further. On these machines, the permissions attached to that badge were not written narrowly. They were written broadly, and the same broad template appears to have been copied across the product line. A certificate taken off one vacuum could be carried to the manufacturer's cloud and used to send instructions to other Shark vacuums across a whole regional section of that cloud. The plumbing underneath is a messaging system where devices subscribe to channels called topics and listen for messages addressed to them. A properly scoped badge would let a device listen and speak only on its own topic. The badge Tokay0 pulled let him listen across the topics belonging to other devices in the region and publish to them as well. Reaching a specific machine after that took only its serial number, which is not a secret in any meaningful sense. It is a factory identifier, not a password. With the serial number and the overbroad certificate together, a command meant for one vacuum could be aimed at almost any of them. Getting the certificate in the first place is where the physical part comes in, and it is worth understanding because it shapes how worried anyone should actually be. The vacuum had an exposed debug interface on its circuit board, the kind of internal service port manufacturers use during development and too often leave reachable in the shipped product. Through it, he reached the device's startup software, and from there worked his way to a full administrative shell and the credentials the vacuum used to identify itself to the cloud. He did not publish the step-by-step method, and there is no need to walk through it here. The relevant summary is that the first extraction needed a vacuum in hand and someone who knew what he was doing. What separates this from the usual hypothetical is that Tokay0 measured the reach instead of estimating it from sales figures. Over a single 24-hour window inside one cloud region, he counted more than 1.5 million unique Shark serial numbers passing through. A little under half of them, around 674,000 devices, answered in a way that showed they would accept a remote command. That was one region over one day. SharkNinja, which owns both the Shark and the Ninja brands, sold more than 28 million units around the world in the previous year. Whatever the exact count of exposed machines, it was not a rounding error. The access itself is the part that lingers. On a camera-equipped model, it exposed the camera, a live view from a device that can drive itself out of the living room and down the hall, steered by someone who has never been inside the building. The stored map came with it, and that map is not a sketch but a measured floor plan that records the rooms and, over enough runs, the hours they tend to be lived in, which is very close to the exact thing a burglar would order if such a thing could be ordered. Last was the Wi-Fi password, which the vacuum kept as readable text, and that is the detail that quietly moves the whole affair out of the category of a privacy scare and into the category of a network breach. A person holding the password does not need the vacuum anymore. They have the network it lived on, and every device keeping it company there. There is also the simpler use that does not require anyone to care about your particular home at all. Hundreds of thousands of always-on Linux computers with internet connections are, to the right kind of operator, just inventory, the raw material of a botnet, whether or not a single camera is ever switched on. The physical access requirement is the reassuring half of the story, and it should be said clearly rather than skipped past. A stranger on another continent could not, out of nothing, open your specific vacuum. But once any one certificate was extracted, it worked against other people's vacuums remotely, with no further contact of any kind, and a certificate is a file. It copies, it travels, and it does not wear out. One open device became a working key to an enormous number of sealed ones. Vacuums, for their part, do not stay put. They get resold, returned, sent in for repair, swapped under warranty, handed down, and occasionally opened by owners who like to see how things work. The wall only has to come down once for the key to get out. None of this belongs to Shark alone, which is what turns one researcher's blog post into something worth a wider conversation. In 2024, other researchers demonstrated that certain Ecovacs robot vacuums could be commandeered over Bluetooth from more than 100 meters away, their cameras and microphones brought to life without the owner's knowledge. A few of the taken-over units were reportedly made to roll around hurling obscenities at the households that had bought them. A DJI robot vacuum carried a weakness of the same family. Earlier still, iRobot's Roomba had its own reckoning when images from the cameras on test units, some of them deeply private scenes inside real homes, ended up circulating far beyond anyone who had knowingly agreed to be recorded. One of the researchers, who has spent years taking these devices apart, described his approach without any flourish at all. He rotates which manufacturer he studies from one year to the next, and each year, reliably, he finds something. The reason the cycle repeats has very little to do with vacuums specifically. Building a connected device that is genuinely secure is slow. It costs real money, and none of it is visible to a person in a shop weighing one model against another by suction and battery life. Nobody has ever bought a robot vacuum because its cloud permissions were scoped correctly. The specific error at the center of this story, permissions written too broadly and reused across a product line, is nearly a cliché in the field, precisely because it is the version of the job that takes an afternoon rather than the version that takes a team and a schedule. When shipping is the pressure and security is the invisible line item, the afternoon version is the one that gets written. People who study this have been saying a version of it for well over a decade, back through years of insecure baby monitors and internet-connected cameras, warning that ordinary appliances were quietly becoming powerful little computers that no one was guarding. The one real lever a buyer holds is the choice of which company to trust with all of that in the first place. If you want to know how to tell a well-secured robot vacuum from a careless one before you spend the money, my full vacuum buying and maintenance guide is linked in the description below. The disclosure itself reads as a small case study in how these episodes tend to go. 2K0 reported the flaw to SharkNinja in March. By his account, what came back over the following months was vague acknowledgement and not much motion, and at one point the company raised the question of whether the issue even warranted a formal vulnerability identifier, a CVE, the tracking number the whole security profession relies on to name and follow a given flaw. Without one, there is nothing for a defender's tools to key on. The problem exists, but has no official handle. He asked the body that assigns those numbers when no vendor will, and by the time he published, he had heard nothing back. He put out his full write-up in July, after the standard 90-day disclosure window had closed, roughly 4 months after he first had a working proof that the attack succeeded against a second vacuum he had bought separately. He deliberately withheld the exploit code, on the reasoning that releasing it would help attackers more than owners, while a fix was still missing. Once the reporting began to spread, the company moved. SharkNinja said it was aware of the report and had fully addressed the identified vulnerability, and that it takes the privacy and data security of its customers seriously. Because the flaw sat in the cloud configuration rather than in the software running on the vacuum itself, the correction could be made entirely on the server side, a change to the permission policy inside the company's own systems with nothing for owners to download. The fix went in on the 20th of July. For the stretch, while it was still open, the only genuine protection available to an owner was crude: pull the vacuum off Wi-Fi, which also removes the app, the scheduling, and the mapping that were the point of buying it. The more durable habits are the plain ones that apply to anything with a chip and an antenna. Keeping the firmware current is the dullest advice in security and among the most commonly ignored, and it does more against the next flaw than against this particular one. Keeping the vacuum and the rest of the smart devices on a network separate from the phones and computers, the guest network most routers can stand up in a few minutes, means a device that is compromised finds itself in a sealed room rather than the whole house. Every one of these upkeep and security steps is laid out in that same buying and maintenance guide in the description, if you would rather have the checklist in one place. As for what comes next, the researcher who changes vendors every year has already said, more or less, what to expect. Last year, the vacuum in his hands was an Ecovacs, this year a Shark, and he mentioned almost in passing that next year it will most likely be someone else's.